That's an interesting question. Who would I pick as my unique TV leader? I think I'm going to pick Joan from Mad Men. And the reason why is I think that leadership can come from the most unusual places. And Joan was an office manager turned partner over time in the firm. And she had her mark on everything. She knew everybody in the office. She knew what was going on in the business. She knew what was going on with staff at lower levels of the organization and staff at higher levels of the organization, all of the partners. She was smart. She kept herself abreast of important changes. She was a real live influencer. And while there were a lot of dramatic things in there that Joan did to become successful, I think she had all of the qualities and characteristics, even as an office manager, and the ambition and the vision of how at each stage of her career she could advance even farther. So I'm going to choose Joan as my favorite TV leader, and also she had a fabulous wardrobe.
The person that comes to mind for me when I think about leadership in TV and the movies, and gosh, there's so many people to choose from and so many examples, but the one that comes to mind these days is Steve Carell, who plays Michael Scott in The Office. So I will admit that in my free time, when I'm looking for something light to maintain my humorous side, I watch The Office, and I just think that he is the epitome of an example of kind of fake it till you make it. And let's face it, there's no question that everything on that show is exaggerated, absurd, and just inappropriate in many cases, and he would be fired if that were real life. But if you sort of look beyond the sort of surface of things and how he does things, and I tend to do that just because of the nature of our work, and I think about what meaningful lesson, or is there a meaningful lesson about leadership and what it takes underneath all of what you see on the surface. And when I think about him, I think about this concept of fake it till you make it, and you don't have all the answers. And I think sometimes leaders feel like when they get that next big job, they'll be easily in a position to know all the answers and have all the perfect techniques and responses and skills, and it's just simply not true. You got to get in there, give it your best shot, learn from your mistakes, show your frailties, and let people know who you really are to some degree. Of course, let's face it, he could use a whole lot more judgment and discretion in real life, but if you sort of, recognize that it's not real life in that show, but that there are some meaningful lessons for leaders in real life in organizations about showing your frailties and learning from your mistakes. And in the process, if you continue to sort of repeat and refine, etc., you will get better over time. But all the answers aren't clear and obvious on day one. So that's what I think about when I think about leadership and him in The Office.
The leader I chose is Bobby Axelrod from the hit series Billions on Showtime. Bobby Axelrod is a hedge fund manager and the owner of a large organization in which he is the visionary, he's smart, he's incredibly gifted, and he's able to move the company forward in a positive way and earn billions of dollars doing so. Even though he's really smart and talented, he still understands the need to have an executive coach on his team, someone who he can sort through his feelings and decision making, because at times things get a little difficult for him. Right now in the series, season 3, he's going through a situation, a tumultuous situation in fact, in which the Attorney General's office is investigating him for insider trading. And Bobby has decided to run past his executive coach what he should do now. And one of the options is something that totally goes against what he believes in, because he knows that he's the best at what he can do. And she gets him to understand that he needs to take a step back and let someone else come in and take charge in the moment for the benefit of the organization. Even though he's smart and talented and gifted, what I like about his character is that he understands that he doesn't know it all. Even deep down, though, he thinks he does. But Bobby Axelrod is a great guy. It's a great series. If I were you, I'd watch it.
I would say Liz Lemon from the show 30 Rock is a pretty excellent example of effective leadership. When you watch the show, you'll find that Liz is tasked with, as a supervisor of a major comedy series on NBC, she's tasked with essentially organizing an interesting group of characters who are pretty odd and eccentric, have a range of idiosyncrasies. She's also working for balls who can tend to be abrasive, insensitive at times. So it's safe to say she's working in a chaotic environment where she has to navigate a whole lot of elements in order to get her job done. She's also dealing with her own personal chaos in her life outside of work. And I really admire the way that Liz is able to use two strengths to help her operate as an effective leader despite all of these barriers she's dealing with. One, she's an emotionally intelligent leader. She's aware of her staff, their likes, their dislikes, their interests, what's going to motivate and inspire them, how does she need to adapt her style to appeal to them. And she's focused with not only what needs to get done, but also building a culture around her where people can do their job, but they enjoy the environment in which they get their job done. I also admire Liz's ability to recognize when she's overusing some of her strengths, particularly her relationship-oriented nature, and how she's not so good at making the tough calls. And what she does to close that gap is she looks to her boss, who I mentioned is a pretty assertive character, and she, despite his quirks, she's able to look at his strengths and pull from that and close the gaps in her own development so that she's really able to be the most effective leader. So for Liz's ability to build a culture, to motivate and inspire her employees, to navigate the chaos that we often find, we often come across in our work lives, her ability to do all those things just makes her a really great example of leadership.